δεξιά είναι, λέει, στα 50 μέτρα 4 σκυλιά.
Ναι, θα το πάρω.
Φεύγεις, σφαίρα.
It's been about 2 weeks since the fires, and I'm still mentally not okay from it. The smell, I just remember the smell of the forest, and I can't get that smell out of my head, that burnt smell where it's a combination of burnt forest trees, dirt that was literally like burnt, and then the smell of burnt bodies of animals. At one moment I saw a butterfly on one small little bush that didn't get burnt, and that was hope. It's as if it was there to remind me, listen, there's still a little bit of life left here. A couple days later, in the midst of this footage, one of my dearest friends, Iris, came to join me to search. She's a photographer, so we both spent a lot of time walking as we were searching to capture the raw destruction that was in front of us. And then at some point we saw a dragonfly. Both the butterfly and the dragonfly were a beautiful omen and a symbol of hope.
There's no life, it's just dead everywhere. It's so sad. Like I can't explain how sad this is. It just stretches on for miles and miles. Driving up here, I saw the zones where the firefighters were parked, and how I knew that was where their base was that there was an enormous amount of rubbish everywhere. It was just ironic, like people are trying to save the forest, and then what remains behind after the fire is a big dump pit of just plastic water bottles and rubbish and garbage. The president said he promises that he'll replant the trees, as if you can just recreate an entire forest like you create buildings and homes. It's not the case. This place needs years and years, decades to create an ecosystem again. You can't just plant trees and expect things in a forest to go back to normal. The entire sense of life here is demolished. This is tied in with global warming. This is tied in with arson. Both reasonings of these fires being created has come down to human impact. Everything's dead. Yesterday when I was here, I had a very sad experience, and I just suddenly heard this sad sound of a bird. One bird. Like, as you can hear now, I mean, I've got even my speaker on my camera. You can't hear any bird. And I heard one bird calling. It wasn't chirping like birds do where they sing. One bird calling out to see if there would be a response, if another bird would call back for it. This was a bird full of sorrow. It was the saddest sound I've ever heard, to be in the midst of a dead forest and to hear one bird in the entire area just call out for something to respond back to it, and there was no response back. Hey! I found a tortoise in the road and I thought, maybe he's the survivor. And I think he would have been a survivor if someone got to him quicker, because he wasn't burnt, but he must have either died from dehydration, from all these days of not being able to access any water, or suffocation with all the smoke when the fires were at its peak. We are mainly responsible for a lot of the destruction that we're doing to our planet. Our government was completely unprepared, even though they know and they knew that Greece has severe fires each year and they're getting worse. Nature is not the priority of the Prime Minister. He simply just said, it's okay, we will make sure we replant the forests, we will replant the trees. You can't just replant trees and expect in the next year for this to be an entire ecosystem again. I mean, this entire area used to have flourishing life. And this area goes on for kilometers, miles. This is just in Athens. Evia is another level. These forests had so much life and a complicated ecosystem. You can't, as a human, just restore an ecosystem like that by planting trees. You need the different types of plants that need to coexist in a forest to be able to provide nutrition and food for all creatures that make up an ecosystem. So that's insects and animals and plants that need other plants. It's very, very complicated. So you can't just simply take pine trees and plant them and say, right, we've reforested the forests, there's an ecosystem again. No, because in order for an ecosystem to survive, you need the fundamental aspects of it to be completed, and nature only knows how to restore itself. But this here, these areas, these forests that have burnt down need 20 to 30 years for it to come right again, minimum. Before life here can actually say that they can flourish. Right now, very little life will probably be able to coexist here. Maybe.
On my second day of searching, I found 2 tortoises alive, and I managed to rescue them. They were full of ash, they looked exhausted, and they were very thirsty. They looked weak, and I took them to Anima Wild to make sure that they would be checked, that all their vital signs would be fine. They did explain to me that the animals did have to go through a stage of rehabilitation. They needed to go on antibiotics, and also many needed a period of oxygen because they inhaled so much smoke that their respiratory system took a huge strain. I found a lot of dead tortoises, and a lot of them actually fell into holes where they couldn't get out. And it's just sad. Like, I don't want to take my mind back there, envisioning the deaths that these animals experienced, but it's natural for your mind to go there when you see them, and you see so many of them, and you just wonder what fear were they feeling in that moment. And I just hope that their conscience left before they felt the worst of their death. But yeah, that was hard. I cried a lot. I mean, I'm still crying from it. Like, I'm still having nightmares. I shed a lot of tears, and I think everyone who went into that forest and deeply loves nature and animals, all of our hearts broke. And like, we are still emotionally wounded by it, because we understand the environmental catastrophe and the negative impact it's had on our ecosystem and the disruption that this has caused with wildlife.
Ξεκίνησε 10:30 το πρωί, κάποιος έριξε φωτιά παντού.
Then we had a massive fire in a village right next to Anavysos. This is the town where my grandparents' home is. Thankfully, I was about a 10-minute drive away from this mountain to be able to attend and help with evacuations of animals in homes and assist any families that needed help with their animals in that moment. I can close my eyes and visually see so much more of the disaster than through the camera lens, because when you're there in person, all of your senses are kicked in and experiencing everything, whereas now when you're watching, you're just listening and visually looking at a screen. You're not in the environment to actually fully experience it. So if you're there to experience it, it's traumatic, it's depressing, and it's apocalyptic, and it's just sad. It's very, very sad.
drive them up and I'll leave them over there. It's okay, babies. It's okay. It's okay.
Once again, I'm standing in another burnt forest here in Greece. This one's near my grandparents' home. This fire started at 10:30 or 10 o'clock in the morning. Different parts of the mountain sparked up with fire, which has us believe by certainty that this was arson, because at 10 o'clock in the morning it was not hot. So when I first got here, the fire had spread over this one mountain where there were a couple of homes below. And that's the video clip that you'll see or have seen, don't know where I'm going to put it exactly, of me rescuing 4 puppies and a big mom.
Λοιπόν, στο πρώτο στενό εδώ που είναι η κολόνα, εδώ, το πρώτο στενό δεξιά είναι, λέει στα 50 μέτρα 4 σκυλιά.
Ναι, θα το πάρω.
Φεύγεις σφαίρα.
Σκυλάκια! Σκυλάκια! Hey! Σκυλάκια, έλα!
For the first time in my life, I understood the feeling of fear of a fire.
It's okay, babies.
Fire is death in the air. Smoke surrounds you. Smoke penetrates your brain. I can't explain it. It's not just the nose and the throat passage. It's inside your head to your brain, where it's like almost like a painful migraine from the smoke. I mean, I give credit to these firefighters. I don't know how they do their job. Just a very weird feeling, running away from a fire and trying to save lives whilst there's a fire above you and you're racing against time. This forest burnt down over 15 years ago, and as you can see, in 15 years this is how much these trees have had to regrowth themselves. If it took 15 years for this tree to get to this point, the trees that were in Tatoi that burnt down were ancient. I'm talking about massive trees, huge, ginormous. Nature is smart. She is able to repair herself, but it's not a quick fix. Like our president just said, oh, well, we'll replant trees. It's not a solution each year to have that mentality when it takes decades to restore. It's not a solution. The solution is to have stricter policies and protection of our wildlife, to stop prioritizing corporations and building companies and the mindset of only worrying about revenue and ways to make money and what to build, and to just keep building and, developing areas. As important as it is to develop areas and build, it is way more important to hold an ecosystem together, to still have wildlife intact. Because if we do not have our wildlife, we've got jack shit. We can have all the money in the world, we can have all the buildings in the world, we can have all the luxury materialistic items and all this pretentious shit that us humans think we need. But there's a lot of stuff that we prioritize over wildlife that is so completely unnecessary. And as I've said, without it, we have nothing. We have no future. Oh, I found one. I found a tortoise. You're gonna have a bath. I'm gonna rinse you off so that these beautiful eyes will be okay. Shame, she's got a lot of ash and stuff on her face. I mean, look at her. This is just from her touching her. She's gonna need a bath, and then she's going to Anima to make sure she's okay. She'll probably need oxygen, antibiotics.
didn't want to include other people's footage in my video. I've just made this as a documentary to remember my experience and to have rights of all the footage that is in this video. It's all mine, so that's why I'm not including anything else. I mean, there's a lot of powerful images and videos that spread like wildfire through social media. I didn't get to save everything. None of us who went to go volunteer and help saved everything. There was a lot of death, wildlife wise. We didn't manage to save everything because it's just impossible to save everything in the wildfire. But a lot of people did help, and those of us that were there to help, we managed to save whatever we could, and that makes a bit of a difference. It's better to save something rather than nothing. Anyways, I'm going to end this here. Thank you for taking the time to watch, and sorry for the emotional footage. Yeah, that's all.